Brilliant. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 10th of September 2025. I would like to welcome members, officers and members of the public watching at home to this Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. This committee plays an important role in the overall governance of the Council. Good governance has many benefits, including helping the Council to make effective decisions, improve performance, and be able to respond to risks and opportunities. Can I invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work?
Can I check the following officers who are joining remotely can hear us and we can hear them? What's his name? Henry. I don't know his name.
So, yes, I can hear you. Apologies.
If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. Please wait for the chair's invitation before you begin. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain button on your microphone units. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and will be visible on the YouTube live stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the cast and vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? No, I'll hand back to the chair then.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. We have apologies for absence tonight from Councillor Stephen Patmore, Councillor Stuart Willoughby and Councillor Dominic Griffiths. Having given due notice, Councillor Ralph Muntzer is substituting for Councillor Patmore. Are there any further apologies? I think that is everything else. Item number 2, minutes from the 19th of June 2024. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of June 2020. Oh, sorry, 11th of June 2025. Apologies there. Could I please have a seconder? Councillor Poopler-Singham, thank you very much. Are there any comments on the minutes? John Cannon.
Yeah, just to echo the previous meeting's comment, it'd be great if the meeting minutes could be proofread just before they get sent out. There's something in here about members asking poignant questions. It probably meant to be pertinent rather than bittersweet, you know. And there was something else, a reason for a decision was for the committee to be provided with the AILs of the Shared Internal Audit Service. Or so it's probably the final results of it. It's intuitively there, but worth tidying up next time, maybe. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any other comments at all in the minutes? In which case, could we please move to the vote?
That motion's carried.
Q. Item 3, notification of other business. No other business has been notified. Item 4, Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purpose of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. Item 5, public participation. We have no public participation this evening. So we'll move on to item 6, SAF's annual report 2024-25. I'll hand over to Darren to present.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members. I'm going to be presenting both SAF's reports this evening on behalf of Nick Jennings, our Head of Service. For those that do not know me, I'm Darren Bowler, the Counter Fraud Manager at the Shared Anti-Fraud Service. Just before I go into a summary of the report that you've got. There's a couple of changes to the published version. In case study 3, references of an overpayment that's been revised in consultation with the council to read and should read sums due for payment. There's also an update for the outcome on case 2, but I'll be addressing that in more detail within the body of the report. So you'll see that it's been highlighted yellow in the version that's been made available online. So referrals over the last year have remained broadly constant and consistent with the previous year. The volume of the referrals were made in relation to council tax and housing benefit, which is to be expected. It is encouraging to see that the reports from the public are at a good level, which indicates that the public has confidence in making them. Not all referrals are made into a case. Where the risk or value is low, we apply a compliance method, and in the last year, 35 such cases were identified. And as a result, £29,000 in council tax and housing benefit fraud was identified. There is an illustration of one of these cases at page 24 of your Buddle, and it's entitled Case Study 3. Of the 19 cases that we closed in the last financial year, 10 identified recoverable losses totaling £43,000 and a further £21,000 in savings ongoing for the next 12 months. Housing allocation is an area of concern both nationally and regionally. SAFS works with the team managing the application process for housing at the council. The current National Fraud Initiative data was reviewed, and of 79 applications identified of concern, 12 were removed from the list, the housing waiting list, with a potential fraud value of £51,000. Preventing fraud is fundamental, but we have to acknowledge it will occur. And what it is identified, early intervention is key. And our work with social housing providers in the council area supports effective and affirmative action when needed. Last year, 3 properties were recovered and handed back to families in genuine need. As well as issues with overpayments of council tax and housing benefit in tenancy fraud cases, there is the expense of temporary accommodation costs to the council. By moving these families into the recovered properties, there has been a saving in the region of £84,000 to the council. Case study 2 highlights our joint working with the council's housing applications team and the social housing providers. Following our investigation, a tenancy fraud case was referred to the council's legal team earlier this year and a summons was issued. Following an early plea of guilty in the Magistrates' Court to 5 separate offences of fraud, including forgery, the defendant was sentenced to 12 weeks custody, suspended for 12 months, 15 rehabilitation activity days, and £3,000 in prosecution costs payable to North Herts Council, plus £154 victim surcharge. We've continued to support the council last year with allegations to do with business rates and the COVID grant scheme. The benefit of that was that one business was found to have been avoiding paying the correct rates for 3 years, which saw the recovery of £16,000 to the council. I've already mentioned the National Fraud Initiative. Further details of our support for the council in this exercise can be found at page 27 of your bundle, as well as our work in the Hertfordshire Fraud Hub we run for our partners. The Fraud Hub last year identified £17,000 in savings for the council. SAFS also manages the council tax framework for the council, and the council's use of it revealed 686 cases where single person discount was not correctly applied, and a liability of £263,000 was identified, and that is subject to recovery by collection. And at that point, I'm happy to take any questions on that agenda item.
Thank you very much, Darren. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Brown.
I've got 3 questions. Thank you for the report, which was very thorough. Under 26 on page 22, it looks like the number of cases decreased from 23-24 to 24-25, both through public reporting and council staff. I wondered if you'd like to comment on that. And I note that later in the report, you say that we need not be complacent, which I totally concur with. So that's question 1. And then there are a number of places in here where it talks about how much we've recovered in terms of losses, and how much it's costing, but I just wondered if you could comment on the amount we recover in comparison to the cost of actually running this anti-fraud service. And hopefully it's in the positive. I mean, I notice on 28 and 29 there are lots of costs, but I can't quite see where that balance is. So if you can help me with that. So two main questions really. So
Just remind me what page you're referring to in your first question.
the first question, I was referring to page 22 about the decrease in the number of referrals, and seems to be from the public and from council staff. It says there was a significant decline. We are talking about item 6. I appreciate it was 24-25, and you.
So if you look at the table on page 23, table 4, you'll see the referrals that were received in the year, and that's only 4 less than what last year. So it's not a lot. And if you look at that graph that's in that table as it spreads out, you can see various peaks and troughs. And there are various explanations that are potentially available for all of those peaks and troughs. But I think it's only 2 years worth, and looking back as far as 18 or 19, we're if you add them all together and then find the mean average, it's peaking up and down. But there's a scale between the high 80s, 90s, and the low 110, 120, 17, where it sits. So it varies, and there could be lots of explanations for that.
I appreciate it varies.
Yeah.
It's just the paragraph I just spotted where it said council staff reporting suspected fraud saw a significant decline from 54 to 32.
What paragraph number?
That's 26, paragraph 26. But it doesn't seem to be borne out by the graph. Oh, it's probably the way it's divided up.
It says a very slight reduction from the 117 in the previous year.
Yeah.
But it's still a higher trend since prior to the COVID
But
pandemic.
the next sentence is about council staff reporting. That's all. It says significant decline.
So they individually reduced by both the public and council staff, but another source clearly made the difference up.
Okay.
So,
that's what I was confused about. So that was the first question. The second question was just about the comparison of the cost of the service versus the recoverable losses.
Yes, the recoverable losses are with the council to recover unidentified losses. I think I might pass that one to the financial officer. Ian, would you like to address that? Because there are other benefits other than.
I appreciate there's some social value which you highlighted.
Ian, if you're happy, I'll deal with the additional benefits that we provide outside of the cost of the recovery versus the cost of SAFs.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly track over time. Certainly, over years we've recovered a lot more, or had the opportunity to recover a lot more than the cost of service. I think it does fluctuate over time, depending what frauds are found in each year. So we'll certainly provide the numbers across a few years to the committee to sort of show that the service does pay for itself. Some of those numbers are kind of assumed amounts. So, for example, something like a tenancy fraud, there's no actual real recoverable money, but obviously that value of that house has some value to be being used by the right person rather than the wrong person. And there is metrics that SAFs use based on national data to get to those numbers. But happy to provide that kind of history over time. And certainly in some years that number's been way higher than the actual cost of service. And other years it's a bit more marginal, but certainly, and then Dan will come with the other benefits of it. There is the fraud prevention bit as well as other stuff Dan will talk about.
But you're confident it pays for itself purely in financial terms, and then there's added social value as well.
I mean, over time it does, definitely. And there's also an obligation on us to have a counter fraud service anyway. So we need to pay for something anyway, even if it found no fraud. But yeah, I think it does pay for itself.
Thank you.
So Ian touched on there the additional benefits. So I won't steal my thunder for the next report, but we've worked with the enforcement teams, which isn't a fraud matter, but because of our unique position, we have ability to stretch across a number of different investigative areas and bring other powers to bear that don't exist anywhere else in Hertfordshire, apart from with Trading Tenders teams to do with financial investigation. So that doesn't exist anywhere else. The ability for any of the teams to pick up the phone and have a conversation about something that they're concerned about exists. The real terms work. How do we quantify that? Well, you saw that there was a £3,000 cost award. That is probably just about covering the cost of that prosecution with our investigative time. So that's a recovery that comes back in to deal with that issue that's already dealt with. And then there's the prevent side. There's publicity that goes out. We're just approaching the International Fraud Week, which is in November. There's lots of comms that we put out. We usually see an increase in referrals around that time as well. I could go on. There is so much more that we can do with officers in supporting them, and we continue to do that throughout the year. And sometimes it's a 10 or 15-minute, half an hour phone call that just is, that's what it is, and it's not recorded. So it's an availability which everyone here is aware of, as far as I'm concerned, that is a reassurance. And what price of all of that can you put on reassurance?
Thank you very much. I'm satisfied that we're getting value for money.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Munster.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, with respect to sort of outcomes, and particularly how the outcomes that we see in North Hertfordshire compare with our statistical neighbours, including other authorities across the county? How do we rank?
We don't actually do that at all. We don't have a ranking chart for any of our partners, and it would be very difficult. We had a brief conversation before the meeting started about demographics and how the council areas, what do they look like in real terms? Who are the people that live there? What is a propensity to commit crime and fraud? Do you have housing stock? You don't. So your nearest, one of your nearest neighbours is Stevenage. So your profile would be entirely different to what Stevenage is. It's a bit like comparing apples and oranges. We could try and compare you to East Herts, but that's a different council area, and things aren't quite the same. It's very similar in the services that you provide, and we see similarities, but it's not always the case. I'm not sure if you're aware, but one of our other partners is Luton. A lot of people ask us to compare Luton and Stevenage because they both have stock. They're a town centre based environment. What can we say about them? We don't have a favourite child, I'm afraid, Councillor. You're all special to us, and we work with the work that's given to us and do the best for all of you as far as we can.
No, would I be able to follow up on that? And no, well, that's always good to hear that you know, we are equal to our peers. But in terms of prosecutions, obviously we've got case study 2 that's dealing with the prosecution there, and the one that you've obviously referenced. How many successful prosecutions have we had? And what are the sentences of which these offenders are getting? Because certainly, if we are having individuals who are committing fraud and they are being either being found guilty or pleading guilty at court, and they're being sentenced, you know, to substantial matters, then we need to make sure that that is publicised to act as a deterrent to those individuals who may be thinking or considering engaging in fraudulent activity.
I'll deal with the first question first. Numbers wise, I'll very happily give you a breakdown of all of the prosecutions that we run and the outcomes, because obviously don't have that at hand. But there are not a lot, and I'll come on to that in a minute. The last part about publicity, then yes. So we work very closely with the press office at all our partners here. That case was in particular was circulated throughout the local press. By the press team here. We have a public-facing LinkedIn page, and we put it also through our comms office as well. So we get it out there as widely as we possibly can. The problem is that sometimes we fight to get it picked up and give it the due publicity that it needs. But I know it was on the council's website, so it's out there. It's definitely out there. And actually, that case is a very good example of quite dramatic sentencing. And there is a history because of that. It's public knowledge. There was reasons that the person couldn't do community service and other things like that. So that sentence reflects that was not an available option. And that's why a custodial sentence was imposed, which was then suspended. And also why there was a substantial cost award made as well. So it's very much a case-by-case basis. So again, very difficult to compare one case to another from different areas of a very similar nature. But that's the detail of that particular case. We don't like prosecuting in simple terms unless we really, really have to. And so the most serious cases will be taken to court. And the ones that meet that public interest test, having already met the evidential test. And the reason for it, it's quite simple economics. It's very expensive to take cases to court. We don't have the CPS. We are effectively prosecuting them privately. So your legal team picks up the burden of paying for the time here in the legal team, and then if a barrister is needed, then that's an additional cost on top of that. And that's before we get to the court door on day one and know how long we're going to face a trial and how much more money that's going to be. So part of the test in relation to the public interest is it in the public's interest to spend a lot of money to not actually got a lot of return? Because I don't think the public would be very interested in us taking cases to court, spending a large amount of money for matters that aren't worthy of doing that, especially when there are other ways of dealing with it. And when we come particularly to this council, we have council tax regulations that allow us to apply civil penalties. We have other options before we get to the door of the court or considering troubling the legal team.
So would I just be able to touch upon that? And I have got two questions which stem from it. At the moment, I believe my understanding, and I haven't sort of actually followed this up recently, but following the increase in the number of private prosecutions relating to TV licenses, for example, I believe the Ministry of Justice or the Attorney General's office is looking into reviewing the regulations surrounding private prosecutions. So my first question is related to how has that sort of review been completed and the measures implemented, and if so, how will that impact on your role as a party which does prosecute? And then in terms of, obviously you have said that it is expensive to go and prosecute. Yep, certainly won't doubt that, but we do need to make sure that these offenders are punished. And therefore, could you provide us with some additional information surrounding potential out of court disposals that you do use as an alternative to prosecution?
So the private prosecution issue is an issue. It's not a great issue for us because we do not do the volume. We are quite literally judicious in how we approach it. It's done in consultation with the legal teams of the partner, with senior officers, and there has to be an agreement that is the most appropriate course of action, having assessed all the other out-of-court disposals. So for council tax, we have civil penalties, which before a criminal offence has even been decided whether we prosecute or not, a civil penalty is a civil matter in that they may have failed to disclose that then their claim for single person discount for the last 12 months shouldn't have been in place because somebody had moved in with them. So there is a £70 fine for each event like that. So over 10 years, if someone forgets to do that, that's £700 able to be recovered, and it can be put on the council tax bill, and then it becomes recoverable. People who apply to the housing waiting list who, with fraudulent intent, shall we say, can be banned from the housing waiting list at this council, and that can last up to 5 years. So that's quite a hefty ban and period of time before we get to the legal team. So that these options are available, and that's basically what they are. We have experienced one case since 2017. It's quite recently, since 2015 when the service started, and it's only quite recently that has gone to the CPS, and that's because there's an issue with that piece of legislation that only allows the CPS to prosecute it. It's to do with data, data compromise. And so that's a live case. I won't talk about it anymore, but that means that we have a relationship with the Crown Prosecution Service, and should anything like that arise again, we have an existing relationship that we go to. So there's always a way forward. It doesn't just mean that because these things are talked about that it'll happen to us. And to reassure you all, this is a very carefully considered approach. As I said to you, we don't like to prosecute because of these issues that you say. We would weaken the process by doing lots of private prosecutions and finding ourselves in deep water with the Attorney General's office, and that's not where we want to be at all. We want to be agile enough to get around the problem, but also have the force behind us to be able to apply those penalties and take people to court.
And sorry, in terms of the potential changes to regulations or changes of which have been implemented, how have they impacted on your organisation, or how do you anticipate them
We've not seen any changes yet.
Okay.
They've not that filtered down. I think there is still some revision to be done on them. I don't think it's finally set in stone, and there have been discussions with us, our legal team, and of course the legal team take them up because it affects all local authorities.
No, perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a more micro issue. Page 24, the case study 3. I was just trying to understand the outcome of that. So it's an example, like saying single person discount, etc. Is that? And it says it resulted in overpayments of over £4,000. Is that?
Yes.
That basically means, is that like a recovery? So essentially,
yes,
that was money that was liable to us that we then worked out and then claimed off the individual concerned.
Exactly that, councillor. And it's the second strand to what we've just talked about, civil penalties, applying the £70 for not doing it. So the overpayment is itself what they should have paid and hadn't, so it's been reclaimed. No doubt, I don't know the detail of that particular case, but there might be some civil penalty in there. And the third strand, when it comes to council tax and enforcement, is something called not civil penalty. So it's gone from my head. Additional penalty. Sorry, an additional penalty is an alternative to prosecution. So that's the last stage before we get to decide on prosecution. Can we offer them an additional penalty, which is 50% of them? So in this, say they owed £4,293, we could apply additional penalty of 50% up to a maximum of £1,000. So in this case, the maximum wouldn't be £2,200; it would be up to 1,000. But the person has to agree to accepting that. And then if they don't pay, and if they don't, then it's because it's an alternative to prosecution. We've got to the point where we've got enough criminal evidence to take you to court. If you want a criminal record, or would you like just to pay the additional penalty as well as the rest of the money back? Okay. Because it is that serious, we're considering that option. It's the last chance.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Biblissingham.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks so much for the reports, Darren. Can I just pick up on the comms point? And you've alluded to some of this, and it's specifically that point you have on page 32, that you've developed a publicity campaign to help staff awareness and help public reporting. And just noting that table 3 that you've got on page 23, the bulk of the referrals have come from the public. When I look around, and I heard the point about, you try to get items out there, put it into the news. I don't really see it. And I've really become aware of the service and what it does being a councillor. But clearly it's a very valuable service. And part of what that conversation you were just having with Councillor Monser, you don't want to get to the point of reacting after the fact, but trying to prevent it. So could you elaborate a bit more on the publicity of the service, the work it's doing, putting the message out there that, if you are doing things wrong, we are coming for you, potentially trying to prevent people from taking action ahead of time.
Can I just confirm which page? Because I think you said 32 to start with.
Yeah, 32's got the point about training plan to build on staff awareness and fraud reporting, publicity campaigns.
Yeah, Okay. So it's a sad fact. The word fraud turns a lot of people off, I'm afraid to say, when it comes to press and reading things. Is fraud. A lot of people just aren't interested. We try to make it as acceptable to as many people as we possibly can, but we can't force media outlets to pick it up, which is why one of the reasons why we've got our own LinkedIn page, because we can push it out, and we push that out to very like-minded people, admittedly, because they're the people that follow us. We do get it across to as many websites that we can that are council related, and people to put it on there. But then for it to be, and then hopefully in the social media world, it gets picked up, it gets shared, and then it becomes more popular. And the difficult thing is that is a industry all of its own. We give it the air to breathe, and we push it out there. We rely on the social media to pick it up, because we do not have a resource to push these out constantly. And we don't do a lot of prosecutions, so they will be far and few between. The other work that we do at the moment, we're doing a lot of work in the colleges and later on the University of Hertfordshire about money mules. That picks up more publicity because we're talking to young people, and that then gets circulated because more people they come to our stand at the Freshers' Weeks, and we get that out. So it's about a demographic. It's about the environment in which we're pushing it out, and having a resource to continually do that. So we use it across 2 or 3 different areas of the wider team. So the training officer that we have at the team puts a lot out. Our intelligence team take primacy on our campaign in November for the International Fraud Week. And then we work with partners on certain projects, and then that goes out through their comms outlets as well. But it is, unfortunately, a topic that's not very well picked up unless it's the thing for you.
So just to clarify, there's nothing specific that you're thinking about now that's resident directed, but relying on, as you say, partner agencies, the work you're doing at the moment. And that's my main kind of concern. Like, how do residents know in North Hertfordshire that this service is there and is watching potentially, or will come for you, and try to have that preventive effect ahead of actually doing something? That's the problem. And I appreciate it's a problem across the board. It's not.
If you speak to comms teams at the various different partners that we work with, and even some of our clients who are very in the social housing arena, are very full public facing. Their front pages, they want to change them. They don't want to keep things on there for too long. They all of the websites have a report fraud. So if you were to go Google now, other search engines are available, report fraud North Herts, your page for North Herts should come up, and there will be a place for you to click on to report the fraud. So if people are looking for it, they find it. And the number of referrals that we get in, and a lot of the referrals that we just have to refer somewhere else because they're not part of our work. So lots of members of the public contact us and give us lots of information about other frauds that don't relate to our service, and we pass those on. So we're known and we're picked up and we're out there. I get your point about the circulation of good news stories, but that just doesn't happen because of the way the industry works. And in the same way that media processes and systems work, we struggle to get that in the front page. We have explored getting it on council tax letters, but that brings a whole world of pain on for the council tax team, and is very difficult because of the way the letter has to be, and it's there's not a lot of room on there. So it's on the council's web page, it's on all of our partners' web pages, it's on our web page, and wherever you were to search it in any of our partner areas, it all comes direct to us. It doesn't sit here at the council. It comes direct into us, so we triage it within a day and work out what we do with these referrals. So it's out there, but I agree with you, it could be more out there, and we welcome any support from the council that to get our message out on any comms that are going out that you're working with. Perhaps a councillor giving a good news article on, a piece to camera when we have these things might be a
I know there's one in Royston that got the press,
Yeah.
the vape shops. That's in your next report, is it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'll wait for that one. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. John Cannon.
Thanks. Yeah, just thinking it through. I remember as a resident just getting a council flyer through the post from time to time. Was it called Inside Hearts or something like that? And it sounds like you've got the content to hand. Maybe NHDC could include some sort of summary paragraph in that. It's one way of reaching residents direct. I also get the subscribe newsletter on email, and that might be a medium for pushing it out. Forgive me if you've already thought about it and eliminated it, but those are the two things that spring to mind because of all the good content that's at your fingertips. Maybe you just need an NHDC to pick it up and give it a channel. An observation more than a question.
I totally agree. And so we give it to the comms teams because we've got 8 partners and we're not fully embedded sitting in the building 24/7, then we let the experts know where it should be. Perhaps on some of those communications talking about, it just needs a banner. Concern about fraud, report it here. You know, something like that even. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Munter.
Thank you. It's just sort of following on from the point surrounding accessibility of information. And I know earlier on you mentioned the shared anti-fraud service LinkedIn. And certainly, you know, I'm on LinkedIn. I spend probably a little bit too much time on LinkedIn, as I'm sure a lot of people in this chamber do. But certainly, LinkedIn caters for a certain demographic of people, one might suggest. And therefore, could I just sort of understand, do you have a Facebook page? Do you have a Twitter page? I'm not going to go to TikTok because certainly I don't think that necessarily that would be the most appropriate. But do you have other avenues of social media that sort of you're able then to promote stories like the ones of which are contained within the within this report?
It's a good idea, but in our experience of managing our own LinkedIn page, that takes a lot of time as well. So when we do give it to the experts, because we're not comms media experts, so each of our partners has a comms team, we give it to them with an anticipation that they will put it out on all of their outlets. And that's the way to get it out, because we don't know 8 partners' demographics to the degree that comms team would do. So we rely on that. Otherwise, we'd be diverted. And then we probably could get a whole person 365 doing our comms for us, but that's an expensive luxury.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the end of questions from the committee. So the recommendations that the committee notes: number 1, the activity undertaken by the Shared Anti-Fraud Service to deliver the 2024-2025 anti-fraud plan for the council. 2, all anti-fraud activity undertaken by officers and SAFs to protect the council against fraud in 2024-2025. Could I please have a proposer? Councillor Pupil-Singham, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Ward, thank you very much. Is there any debate at all from the committee?
Don't worry, it's not controversial, but look, thank you. I know obviously you've got a number of other reports to present, but thank you for the work that you've done on this and for answering the questions of which we fielded. I think certainly we all understand a lot more about how fraud is being tackled in North Herts.
In which case then, if that's the conclusion of the debate, we will move on to the vote.
That motion's carried.
Thank you very much. So item 7 is the SAF's Anti-Fraud Progress Report 2025-26. I'll hand back over to Darren to present.
Thank you, Chair. There's just one change to the published version. It's at paragraph 15, and the word borough should be substituted with the word district. I apologise for that. So, Chair and members, this report covers the period of April to July 2025. Just so you're aware, because I know we're sitting in September now. There were a total of 26 allegations of fraud received, with only 2 received from colleagues here at North Herts, and that's quite low for the start of the year. Don't really know the reason why that is at the moment. 18 cases are currently live for investigation in this time range, and 8 are at referral stage. There's an estimated loss, and that, when we were talking about financials earlier on, is quite a very broad estimate. So when I say it sits at £129,000, it wouldn't necessarily be 129,000 because we're using static figures, and when we're talking about council tax, we know that varies, but these are the figures that we apply because we need to know what we're dealing with and what we're handling with, and when we break that down into service areas, we can see where there might be more risk and we might need to divert some more resource to. So that's a very broad brush, and gives us some idea of what we're dealing with rather than empirical data. Proactive work supporting the council's enforcement team has taken place with an investigation into a shop selling illegal vapes. The evidence gathered by our team supported the officers in closing the premises, and that financial inquiry is still live. I know the shop is now closed. As well as continuing to support the housing allocations team this year, I'm pleased to say that we continue to work with Cecil Homes, and 3 more properties this year have been recovered that may save the council in the region of £126,000. I know Ian mentioned it about the figures and the question. I'm just going to refer all the councillors at the beginning of the report, the last agenda item. It mentioned a paper called Lost Homes, Lost Hope. I implore you all to read it. That's where the figures come from for tenancy. It's for when we're dealing with housing. That paper came out relatively recently, and the content is illuminating for those that may not be fully aware of it. So the work on the results of the Herts Fraud Hub was suspended because of the main National Fraud Initiative exercise. They are going to recommence in full at Q3. However, something that's not in the report, and because it's come to light post the report being passed on for publishing, was a very recent test run of the Fraud Hub, the Hertfordshire Fraud Hub, which found 100% upload completion at North Herts Council, which is fantastic. So all of the data that needs to be uploaded was uploaded and uploaded on time. So for those taking part, that's a big thank you from us. But in this test run, we also found 1,000 matches, which have picked up about £25,000 worth of savings, and that's all already being dealt with by the team. So just to explain, the National Fraud Initiative is a biannual exercise. It's a massive data washing exercise between local government, central government, lots of data sources. There's some external ones as well. But the Hertfordshire Fraud Hub is a similar exercise on a smaller scale because it only relates to our 8 partners. And that's key because you're likely to have more matches and more relevant matches that you can deal with because you border other partners. And that allows 2 things. One, for them to be picked up obviously quicker because we run it every quarter. And secondly, the benefit for that is twofold. One, it picked up quicker, and it's more likely to be productive because of the matches of the people living nearby. So you could have someone living in East Herts or Stevenage that is residing here, and we found a match, but the person has got single person discount or has got CTRS in place, and so that's a really good bonus. But it also means that we're cleansing your data for 2 years' time when the national initiative is run again. So instead of getting tens of thousands of matches, you'll get less. And that's how it works. So we deal with the fraud earlier, or we can deal with it at a lower level, so we're not getting to the prosecution situation, and you get less matches and work to do every 2 years. So the progress on the KPIs in the plan for this year are at the end of the report and either on target are part met and look to be completed. And the other section is some of them have already been completed. Some additional information also that's not in the report is an update on the plan for this year, which includes a review of the relevant policies that we support the council with. So that's another added benefit as being part of the service. So we provide anti-bribery and corruption, anti-fraud policies, money laundering policy, and we'll be looking at this year the new offence of failure to prevent fraud, which came into force quite recently. So that new area of fraud will be brought into the policies as well, and as well as providing all the training to the various teams here at North Herts. So the HR team have already accepted one training session on fraud awareness, and the remaining 4 sessions that we've got available will fall into the second half of this year in Q3 and Q4 and be delivered. It's a short report, so that's me for now, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you for the update, and I can confirm the shop in Royston is very firmly closed and has great big notices on it. So going back to the comms point, that might be quite a good way of informing people. A lot of people walk past there and see the huge notices in red about shut by court order. So it's good to see the service being effective. Just one question, really. I noticed in paragraph 9, you talk about a new offence of failing to prevent fraud, which is being introduced, and you're trying to work out what this means. Have you got any further information about that, about what the risks might be and the additional costs might be to the council?
It's very similar to the legislation that was introduced some years ago, the failure to prevent bribery and corruption. It's very corporate focused, but it captures a lot more than just the big corporates. Unlike the bribery and corruption one, where we again are captured in it, the focus for that, the prosecution of those pieces of legislation, especially when we see a recent one from the Serious Fraud Office, they're at that end of the scale. However, the legislation is in force and it could affect us. So our view is at the moment that we don't think it will bite here too much, and with many of our other partners, but we need to do training on it. We need to be aware of it. We need to know what that looks like in real life, actually, as the kids may say, because words on a piece of paper of statute don't always translate in your head to what it looks like. It's pretty much what it says on the tin: failure to prevent bribery. So we have in place, or you have in place with our support, a policy for anti-fraud and bribery and corruption already. It's covered, but it's not covered to this extent in this piece of legislation. It is due timely for a review. So when we do review it, it will be included into that. So that probably may come in within this year, because I think the policy's very soon for renewal, so it could be done this year, or it might be the early part of next year. So once we have got more steer from central government and other authorities, then we can understand and put it into a contextualized form that makes sense to everybody, so we all know what we're dealing with.
In essence, you're not expecting it to make a huge difference to what we do already. Okay, thank you very much.
It shouldn't incur us any costs as long as we abide by the law.
Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's the same topic as Councillor Brown just asked. I'm just a little bit concerned that you're saying the legislation's actually in effect, and we're going to do the work. Although I appreciate it's aimed at corporates, it's live, and if you know, heaven forbid, we had a massive fraud case and we got scrutinised on have we applied it. I think it's criminal liability ultimately for that act on the council. So I'm just wondering whether there's anything we can do to accelerate the understanding of that, or at least make sure it's kind of on our risk register or something in terms of dealing with that, because it just feels like there's a bit of an exposure there that we don't necessarily know whether we've got all the cross the I's and dots the T's. Or
the current policy contains contains anti-bribery already. It's somewhat future-proof. Whilst we wait for the authorities to come out and give us more guidance, we wouldn't amend that policy. So once we've got everything and had a clear view of what we're going to put in that policy, rather than write it twice and get it wrong once and then have to amend it, we're going to get it out, and that will come with some fraud included then into the fraud awareness training. It's already in the form that I've just explained it to you in the fraud awareness training and awareness. There is no detail to it yet. It's very much like it says what it is. It's if we don't have anything to fail to prevent it, then we're in trouble. We do have things to prevent it. There's systems, there's process, there's proper governance here. There are policies that tell people what's right and what's wrong when it comes to things like that. And I believe it's probably in the contract, and there's probably an online iLearn module that covers it as well here, because it usually is in all of our partners, because we asked for that previously. So there's quite a lot here already. And if anyone's so silly enough to get involved in bribery and corruption, then it's quite simple, plain English language.
Yeah, sure. I'd have been just for clarity, I wasn't suggesting none of that's in place. I guess my point was making sure we've got some evidence somewhere that we've considered it and we think the things are in place in the interim while we go through that further process, and to make sure that if we got challenged on it, we could evidence the fact that.
So all of the above those things I've just mentioned are in place here. I'm sure Ian's got a couple of things as well to add.
Yeah, thank you.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, the key bits around having those systems in place and that education for all our staff around anything that looks wrong, report it, tell us about it. And that's why we've got a policy that covers fraud, bribery and corruption. It's just trying to capture that everything you think doesn't look right, tell someone about it and get that done there. So that's what we'll get in place. And that's enough to cover what the legislation says. In terms of legislation, it only comes to play if the fraud actually could benefit us as an organisation. And actually us benefiting from fraud is pretty unlikely. So in that context, it is aimed at corporates. We are caught by it. We will continue to learn from others about how we could do more on that. But the culture is the key bit, and getting that training out there, which you already do through teams, seeing staff directly, and also online learning.
Okay, thank you.
John Cannon.
Thank you. It is one loose thread on the same topic. Thank you for bringing it to this committee. It does make sense that it comes here. The question really is for North Arts Council to confirm that there is no other committee that would own this risk, and this is the one place it should come. And I wonder, does that prompt a change to our terms of reference just to formalise that reporting line into this committee rather than another one somewhere? How is the council owning it demonstrably?
Yes, this committee is charged with review of our fraud processes and fraud governance, while the reports from staff come to this committee. So yes, it is the place that it is owned, and therefore it will feature in all future staff reports as to progress on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee at all? If not, thank you very much, Darren, for fielding so many tonight. Done very well there. The recommendation that the committee notes the progress by officers and the shared anti-fraud service to deliver the anti-fraud plan for the council. Could I please have a proposer? Councillor Pupler-Singham, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Ward. Thank you very much. Is there any debate at all? If not, then could we please move to the vote?
That motion's carried.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Darren, for your time tonight.
Questions? It's always nice to have them. It is.
So we'll move on now to item 8, which is the SIAS Progress Report 2025-26. Hand over to Chris Wood to present.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, feeding off that point, the level of interest in the counter-fraud offering through SAFs has been appreciated. I think a comment was made around comms and there not being an interest out there in the media around fraud. You should see how they feel about internal and external audit. But but in this room, I like to think that the opposite is true. I also enjoyed the comments on the ails of SIAS. I can assure members that A, we're not ill, and B, we've not taken up a brewing business to generate additional income. But thank you for pointing out the spelling mistake there. I think with the amount of time spent on the fraud papers, I will take them as read, but part of what I wanted to do, and I now find myself still on the fraud papers, let me just make my way along, is just point out some updates. I wrote this before I ended up in Menorca, and it was issued way before even the publication date. So I think a few updates. Thank you for your engagement with the new accounting system accounts payable audit. Question from Councillor Ward was appreciated. Just in a general point, I think it's good to engage with those by email or outside of this meeting. It gives me time to look things up, confirm the way things are, which I might not have to hand while I'm sitting here in the room. So thank you for your engagement with that. Details of that will be in the next progress update, but it was issued between the publication dates. Just working down the report on page, what must be now 40, with the high priority recommendations. Right at the back of the report, there is a Churchgate recommendation, high priority recommendation. I'm told that that variation agreement in that finding should now have been signed off and that that one should be considered implemented. I haven't had an opportunity to confirm that. And as I've said to the committee before, we have an evidence-based follow-up of recommendations going on at the moment, which will confirm it. But I believe that to have been signed off and now been implemented. I'm going to come to a little engagement shortly around a proposed plan amendment, but we've also issued another draft report which won't show in the performance stats at 210. Just issued the LGA corporate peer review action plan draft report to Ian. So he's considering that, and that will move our draft report figures on to 9%. Also, number of audits showing good progress since the end of the summer. Things have picked up again since last week. So deliverable days have moved on to 28% as well. What else did I want to update you on that's changed? One omission. We have on Appendix B, we've tried to map out by quarter when things are due. There's one audit missing off there, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which is firmly in the middle of field work. So if you happen to be matching up Appendix A and B, there's a missing audit from Appendix B. So I think back to the plan, we have one proposed amendment which isn't written in here, which is around the digital transformation audit. I will draw Ian in to help me explain this one, just to put him on notice. We have been talking to the service about how we do that audit and whether we do that audit, bearing in mind some capacity challenges in the service. Digital transformation is on the council's delivery plan. It's a significant project. It's also in the LGA corporate peer review. It's mentioned a lot. But we also found ourselves, and Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but a number of the corporate projects under the digital transformation program are probably being assessed in the light of potential changes under local government reform and whether you actually deliver new systems that may not be compatible when a new authority is formed. So there's some assessment around that. We've also had proposals to replace it with a local government reform and cyber risk audit. So looking at cyber risk in the context of local government reform. And I guess I thought I'd put that before the committee. You ultimately own the plan and approve it on behalf of North Herts. Local government reform and cyber risk are top risks in your delivery plan and risk register as well. So does the committee consider that a fair swap, or is it better to proceed with the digital transformation audit, perhaps scope it differently, but still make sure we focus on something from within that program? Ian's going towards the speak button, so I'm going to let him go for it.
Yes, to add a bit more context, the original focus of both the digital transformation and the audit was more around areas where we could use our software and coding capability and low-code platform we purchased for our customer management system, to use that system for how we could get bits of software that are legacy, sort of old bits of software, and transform them to be more modern and lower kind of duplication and lower user input into them. What we're finding with LGR is that they would end up being quite bespoke bits of software that run on a certain platform, and therefore we may struggle when we go through LGR for them to be much use beyond the life of North Herts, which may be quite short. And so therefore considering whether we should sort of stick with the less good bits of software, or stick with, or go for more sort of, I suppose, more commercial bits of software that are more likely to align with what other authorities are doing, so that we're kind of on similar software when we go through that process. So that's taken the focus on that team from looking at this on the software side to actually looking at the process side and doing some mapping around where's our effort going into, and where can we reduce that effort, and look at kind of mapping out processes, looking for duplication, and therefore trying to do that, sort of driving out sort of some of those process efficiencies which give our staff more time to be doing stuff and lead to better outputs for our customers. So that side rather than just purely the software side. And so therefore the team, we certainly want to look at revise the audit to take that focus. The other thing to pick up is that team is doing a lot of work with a new waste contractor and their systems to make sure that all of our online forms are pointing into that system and working properly. There's been a huge amount of work going into that, and that's setting them back a little bit, and therefore that's where the resource issues come from around resourcing that audit. They're not saying they can't do it, but obviously, it would free up more time to other things if they did that instead. So there's definite benefits to both the approach that Chris has put forward around the two audits we could do. Just sort of felt, given that quandary in your audit plan, whether you had any views to sort of help feed into that decision making. You can obviously just leave it with us as officers and we'll make the decision, but welcome any views you've got.
Thank you both. Do you want us to head to the committee now for questions and any comments on that? Or is there anything else you want to present on the report prior to that?
I think I've done with the report, and is there any other questions? I think just in my professional opinion, we need to be doing something. I don't think we can remove digital transformation unless it's replaced with another significant risk, which the cyber risk local government reform is. So it's making sure if we do a replacement, you keep something key from your council delivery plan in there and don't just remove them altogether. That's my professional opinion. You've still got to focus on a key risk if you replace one with the other. So I think I know what I prefer, but the opinion of the committee is certainly valuable and appreciated.
Thank you very much. I'll move now to the committee for any questions or comments relating to either the report as a whole or to that particular issue around the potential change of the upcoming plan. Councillor Ward.
Oh, thank you. Just wanted to clarify what you just said, Chris. In terms of potential alternatives based on the risk matrix. Is did you say cyber was one of them?
We cover cybersecurity through quite a number of audits, and you can see one on website security, for example, in the plan already. But this is more, and Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, cyber risk in the context of LGR rather than a broad cybersecurity audit. We've covered cybersecurity almost every year in some form or
Yeah,
another.
that's what I thought.
So it's about giving it a specific focus, and that would need to be scoped out. But from my professional opinion, if you brought that in, it replaces one key risk or project in your delivery plan with other key risks and is therefore acceptable from my internal audit professional opinion. But
Okay, and just what that would mean, is that related to the risks around, for example, information sharing around our residents and customer base and things like that, or what's the nature of cyber risk related to LGR? I'm just trying to understand what that would actually mean. You'd look at.
This is where I wish my IT auditors through BDO were sitting here, because they've been scoping the work. So if Ian has any broader understanding of that, it would be appreciated. But
I'm not sure I can add anything that would kind of be that helpful, but that there are risks there that I think are worth looking into. I don't think I think what we're given the two options is they're both meaningful audits we could be doing. So therefore that they both add value, and we'll obviously do more work on scoping them out before we undertake the audit, but they are both meaningful audits that will have, there are risks involved with both LGR and cyber, and certainly together there are risks as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
On a completely different subject, just a question, and I think you may have mentioned it in the updates, but 213, you talk about the fieldwork on the LGA peer review audit has been unable to progress, but did you say that it subsequently has been progressed up as an update to the report? Is that what I heard? And if not, why? Can you just say a bit more about why it hasn't progressed?
I'm very pleased to say it's the former. It has progressed and a draft report's been issued. You're right that 3 weeks ago, and time overtakes you very quickly. I'm pleased to say in that respect. So absolutely right. Draft report issued and with Ian, and is not lagging in any way.
Thank you.
Councillor Pupler-Singham.
Thanks, Chair. This is, again, slightly LGR adjacent, so probably. I was just curious, and this is just clarification for me. What's happening with the shared services during that process? Is the assumption that they will transfer over to whatever new structure is going to come off the process? We're going through it, so we'll probably see more about it in the next couple of months, but I'm just curious, since we're here, if you know more about that at this stage.
I wonder if this was something I was discussing before the meeting, but I wonder if, Ian, did you want to comment more broadly on what you know?
We don't know anything yet. There have been no decisions yet around where any service will sit and sort of the definite footprint of those services. I think it's probably fair to say we certainly see the benefit of the way that both SIAS and SAFs operate currently, and therefore we have to bear that in mind in terms of how we go forward with it. So we wouldn't want to lose the benefit that has, but at the moment there are no decisions around what any service will look like under the new model, under any of the models we proposed around 2, 3 or 4. But that is something that is being worked on around. There is a key work stream on service design, and that will look at where those services sit and how they operate in those models.
Could I also just come in? I'll big the shared services up, if I may. That we cover a large portion of the county with SIAS and SAFs already. We believe we provide a good value for money service and meet all the objectives of the shared service for its existing partners. There's only a limited number of current authorities that don't buy our services at the moment, but I feel we're in a good position to provide services to however many new authorities we end up with, simply by virtue of as I say, providing a good service, and we're in pole position. But we're there already. We're doing it. So there'll be much bigger things for any new authorities to deal with.
Thank you very much. John Cannon.
Thanks. Just thinking around it, appreciate your comments about your work with other authorities, because I was pondering whether your service would have an insight into the systems that our peer local authorities might run, and whether it would be practical or indeed worthwhile doing some sort of assurance exercise over integration risk, knowing what you know with those other authorities and the systems they've got. So if you look at North Herts, your audit plan has looked at cyber defense and the external threat. Looking ahead in time, maybe the biggest risk is system integration or indeed incompatibility. And within North Herts, I wouldn't have any clue what our neighbours would use. And if we are to merge, there could be data transformation, data integration risks, which we don't have assurance on as yet and could be quite costly. So it was nagging at me. I thought I'd share the thought. If you wanted to try and navigate the cyber agenda on the plan with the challenges coming up under LGR, that's a thought that sprang to mind, if that would be of any interest to the committee.
It's a huge risk, and one that's been learned from those authorities who have already done local government reorganisation and devolution, going all the way back to 2009, I think, with I think it was Cornwall amongst the first. So those risks are well known. The integration of systems and compatibility of systems, Ian mentioned service design work stream within the current project across all the councils in the Hertfordshire. They've started to pick up what systems are out there. They've listed them out. They're doing the audits on that to confirm what's in place. There's some assurance structures built around that to make sure they've got them right. Exactly what that looks like only becomes known once it's been determined how many authorities we're dealing with. Is it 2, 3, 4, or any other number? At that point, I think there'll be a determination when we know the way forward as to how internal audit teams within Hertfordshire are drawn into the exercise, but there is existing assurance around that. The discussion behind the scenes has been at what point do internal audit get involved and who commissions them. So at the moment, we're looking at risks from North Herts' point of view or any of our other partners, but at some point, this overarching county-wide programme needs to, in my view, involve internal audits and exactly risks like that. So it's more a timing issue of when, not if, in my opinion. That's certainly how it worked elsewhere when I've sought the opinions and canvassed the opinions of heads of audit elsewhere who have already been through this. It was more about the timing of when they were involved. You can also get assurance in other ways through other compliance and assurance providers. And indeed, I'm aware of some places that have held scrutiny over some of the issues, for example. It doesn't have to just come from internal audit, but we're certainly a key assurance provider. I hope that's answered your question, but the risk is real, and thank you for pointing it out.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Oh, thank you. I was just thinking about the alternatives to the looking at digital transformation again. Is when we went through overview and scrutiny last night, I looked at the big items on the delivery plan. One that is both big and has a high risk level at the moment of some delays is the leisure centre decarbonisation. I can't remember. Have you looked at that recently, or I was just suggesting to the committee that might be a swap instead.
Thankfully, that was one that's already in the audit plan. We're embedded on the project team. There've been a couple of reports we've issued along the way, and Councillor Elbert, who's I think until certainly recently, I think still on the project board perhaps, has hopefully seen us make a visible contribution to that. We're following an embedded assurance approach on that. So we're actually sitting with the project over its lifespan, both last year and this year. Yeah, I mean, I've issued a number of reports on it. Nothing major coming out of it. I think, as I pointed out in my year-end report last year, sometimes you can have all the right governance in place, be doing all the right things, and then something happens with the contract or unforeseen costs arise, and it's, all of those things can happen. You're obviously aware of the cabinet papers on and probably through Ian's reports here on things like expenditure, but have you got the right mechanisms to pick those up early? Have you, are you reporting them to the right people? Are they being discussed in the right way? And are they transparent, for example? Those are my concerns, but I can't stop them happening. But if the right governance is in place, I can make sure that's certainly right. There's not often I've found the perfect project.
No, it's a slightly different topic. No, okay, thank you. I didn't realise it's already on the plan, so it's not really a viable swap. Okay.
As is Churchgate, for example,
Yes.
in the plan, that also gets regular scrutiny. So I'm just not keen to lose something altogether, but I think there are valid alternatives. Yeah, the committee's opinion was valued on that. If they had a strong opinion, if not, we will make our own judgments and report them to you as we do in every update under the plan amendments report.
Thank you. Yeah. A strong opinion on it. I don't know about other people, but
Councillor Albert, I see you lit up. As you just want to respond to any points there?
Yeah, only just really briefly to. I mean, actually, let me say that I actually thank Chris for his involvement in around the decarbonisation project. I think it's been hugely useful to have him as part of that. Actually, challenge the board, and when you're looking to make difficult decisions, and I think that's been, a real value, and I think has helped us make better decisions. I think around that, and when it's been, I think, quite difficult and some quite balanced and fine decisions to make on the right way forward. So I think it's worked well, and I think having the audit service involved in our key projects, whether it's the decarbonisation, Churchgate, and so on, I think it helps this, and hopefully helps this committee to, with, and assures you more that actually that those boards are operating in a way, and getting the appropriate advice and support from our shared audit service. And let me also say, I'll be very much advocating in one hat or another that the audit service are, I think they are, and the fraud services are a model for what service delivery should be across the county. And I think that's the sort of thing when we move through LGR. And so, I think I'm really hoping we can preserve that structure in the way forward. But so hopefully that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. John Cannon.
Thanks. So we've debated, considered a few options in theory. Could I ask Chris, what would you propose as alternatives? Do you want to put them on the table for the meeting tonight?
So thank you, John. The two, it's rescoping the digital transformation audit, as Ian said, along the lines of process, or it's replaced the audit altogether. It's the same director oversees the audit, but it will move to the IT team, which would be cyber risk in the LGR context. So keep the audit and change the scope, which is the flexibility we encourage. It's written in this paper. It's a flexible plan. You don't stick to it rigidly, or replace with cyber risk in LGR. One audit, cyber risk in an LGR context.
And which one, in your professional opinion, would you prefer to prioritise given the choice?
The answer's both. The one I wouldn't do is do nothing. I think I don't mind in a professional way replacing one high profile project or risk within our council delivery plan. What I don't want to do is provide you with an opinion next June that doesn't have your key risks covered under that opinion. So that's why I don't want none, but I don't mind whether it's one or the other. It's just whether the committee had a view. You're well within your rights to pass it back to officers and ourselves to discuss and thrash out. But we often just communicate plan amendments to you. It's quite nice actually to engage with you and thrash it out with you. It's makes a change. So unhelpful, I'm afraid, in terms of one or the other, but we've got to do one or the other, in my opinion.
When would they need doing? I wonder, would a solution be to kick it around some more with officers and come back with a proposal and a risk assessment rationale next time?
I didn't know. Being honest, we already end up with the audit plan pushed back the end of the year as it is. We need to get on with audits basically. So I don't want to prolong it too long and go, let's talk about it too much. I think it's a case of any strong views, we'll take them on board. Otherwise, we'll come up with you, we'll come to decision and we'll get on with it, because the more you push the back of the year, the more the higher the risk of delivery audit plan.
Yeah. And the more I'll end up writing paragraphs, and roughly 2.11 and 12 downwards on risks to the plan, as I did last year. So, yeah.
I think, John, you covered the point the question I was gonna go with, about whether it's a case of being able to develop a scope and bring it forward. But I think if time is of the essence in terms of getting on with doing the delivering the plan, then it says probably not an option. Councillor Brown.
It's really just a question around the digital transformation project. How far through are we, and I mean, how much, what phase of the project are we, and how long till it's complete?
You can never complete. There's always more stuff to look at.
Well,
they're going through things in priority order, looking at things where either contracts, software contracts coming up to expiry, or focusing on areas of work. I think actually that's an important thing to look at. But business transformation is that you can never complete because you've always got more areas to look at. But they have been working recently on things like the waste contracts, work there. They're looking at processes within the management support units and work there around in areas of that. Are there process changes you can deliver there? And they've been working on freedom of information, some bit of software there to help with that process. There's probably one I've forgotten as well. There's lots of bits they're working on, but it's lots of areas to still look at.
The reason I ask is it feels like it's been going on a very long time, almost since I joined the council, I think. I don't have any strong views either. I'm happy to leave it to officers, but I do concur with John Cannon that there's huge risks when you come to merging systems across different authorities, and that we need to be well on top of that, logging those risks well ahead and doing what we can to mitigate them.
Absolutely. It's slightly outside my purview, but I know within the LGR project, risk has been strongly considered across all work streams, and risk registers are in place. And I know that particular risk John Cannon raised is certainly in there, along with quite a number of others. My risk team has been involved in that, along with risk officers from a number of other councils. So I'm pleased to say risk management is at the heart of what's taking place. There's risks for right now related to the submission all the way to where we find ourselves when new authorities go live and beyond. So, yes.
Councillor Puplissingham.
Thanks, Chair. There's so much uncertainty around LGR, right? And part of that will create the problem, I suppose, in trying to do some work around it. But that in itself is kind of, my view is that we should be doing the work around that. So there should be an audit around that just because of those uncertainties. And this is years ahead, potentially, if it all goes to plan. This 26, 27, 28 overlap where we got these shadow authorities before there's the takeover of the new authorities. I feel like that's just a prime point. If you're cyber criminals out there and you're looking for points at which you can maximize your advantage, when there's supposedly two authorities where there's uncertainty as to who's doing what potentially, and this might become clear in the next few months to years, but I feel like we should be potentially doing that work now to get ahead of it and seeing where those risks might materialize. And cyber risk is everywhere anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's just the biggest risk coming, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger as we become more online for all our services. So potentially us doing that work now would be us, and going to that point earlier about our obligations to prevent fraud. Well, we know that LGR is going to be a massive risk potentially just because of the uncertainty around it. So should we not be doing that work now with the audits potentially?
I'm not sure if I need to comment, but I
No,
agree. It's yes, and I think that would be my comment. Is I think a strong view is appreciated, because then Ian, myself, and the service have got something to work with.
Councillor Munster.
Forgive me, Chair, this isn't going to be a question, but more of an observation. Now, we can't escape the fact that local government reorganisation is happening, but, and I think Councillor Albert and I are in rare agreement on this matter, but until such a, I'll let him confirm at a later stage. But I think the position that I take is very much until such a time as to when, officially the power transfers, the baton is passed from, the two-tier system that we have to the unitary authority. We should be very much sort of focused on going full steam ahead with discharging our responsibilities to our residents and to the taxpayer. So yes, whilst of course, we've got local government reorganisation very much in the rear view mirror potentially, we do need to make sure that we are discharging the responsibilities that we currently hold and have, and therefore certainly my view would be we need to progress with this. I think it's highly unlikely that with the governance arrangements that will be implemented potentially, that the shadow authority will have such scope as to be dealing with these matters, and therefore certainly to enable us to have, or that authority to have greater capacity to focus a little bit more strategically, and to make sure that we've got the best possible outcome and ensure that actually, this is not something of which is forgotten about. Because if you look at the other local government reorganisation processes, even larger strategic documents that one would submit are potentially more important, such as local plans. In Buckinghamshire, that hasn't been delivered even 7 years after reorganisation. So let's give the new authority something to work with. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Munster. Any other comments or questions at all from the committee? Councillor Ward.
Just another thing to note on, Chris, when you're talking about Churchgate and that high finding that sounds like it's subject to your validation now getting closed, which is good news. I just wanted to probably make the point that we talked about this in overviewing scrutiny last night, and I was challenging Councillor Albert on his assertion that had been rectified, because I was reading the FAR report, which obviously I now realise is a bit out of date, but I just want to recognise that what Councillor Albert was saying was indeed correct. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Well, hopefully there's some of the commentaries provided food for thought for officers and those involved in terms of looking at the plan. So I suppose if there's anything else that does emerge in anyone's minds in the meantime after the meeting, I'm sure Chris will be very happy to receive any other comments in the near future, just in case there is anything else. But otherwise, if there is no more questions to come forward, then the recommendations are that the committee notes, number one, the SIAS progress report for the period to 15th of August 2025. 2, the implementation status of the reported high priority recommendations. Number 3, the plan amendments to the 2025-26 annual audit plan. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor Buble-Singham, thank you. And seconder. Councillor Brown, thank you. Is there any debate at all? If not, could we please move to the vote?
That motion's carried.
A recess for a few minutes.
I think as well to facilitate a couple of our presenters leaving, that's probably a good idea. So if we could take a break for 5 minutes and be back at about 7 minutes-ish past 9, please. Thank you very much.
you say you probably got one there? That's probably one of that.
You want to watch it both live and
watching it to make sure that we're not making a mistake when he's not here.
There you go. Right. Can we take our seats, please? One day I'll get a chance to do that, but right. If we could now move on to agenda item number 9, the first quarter revenue budget monitoring 2025-26. I'll hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give you a brief introduction to this one, and then we'll take any questions. So just to point out 2 changes to the report for the cabinet version. The first of those is paragraph 8.3, and this is my fault. My accountant went on holiday, and I picked up the final preparation of the report, and I made a change to the table, and I forgot to carry through the numbers of this paragraph. So it should read that where it talks about an underachievement against the planned savings in 8.3, it should say an overachievement of £59,000. The change relates to the fact that we changed the numbers in relation to the agency model for leisure, and that's the number that should have fed through from that. So that's a correction there that we've done for the cabinet version. The other change for the cabinet version is that we've got a request for a write-off of a debt, and it's over £10,000. It's an old housing benefit debt. We've got to lots of effort to try and recover it, but it hasn't succeeded. So it's about just over £11,000, the debt. That's over the limit for cabinet to approve, so we're looking for cabinet to approve that write-off of that debt. So a bit more of a detail of that in the cabinet version for them to consider as to whether we approve that write-off. Apart from that, the report follows the format you're probably now quite used to in this report. The one bit I'll probably highlight is in relation to the list on page, get the right page number, 60 of the report pack. We've got a bit of tidying up there in relation to particularly the learner pool and the decarbonisation. Those are 3 decisions that have been made around those removal of that from the capital side, and we should amend the revenue budget for those. So tidying those up. In relation to the leisure centre improvements, we sort of picked up at the end of year, and then that should have flowed through with kind of an adjustment rather than kind of going one way than the other way. But there's some tidying up there. But overall, the tables are as they usually are. I have in the report added in, because it was missing from the last report, the position in relation to PCNs at end of year, so a bit of commentary about that. It's quite a complex area what the pharmacy lands up at, but I put the kind of position we're currently working towards in the accounts, but it may still change a bit before we finalise the number through audit. But yeah, happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Couple of detailed questions and then an overarching question. So in paragraph 8.6, you talk about Princess Mews car park and the closure and the loss of income. Have you identified a risk that that might never reopen? Because I think we don't own that, and it was leased to us. And I think from what I'm hearing, there's a good chance it won't be leased to us again. And so have we identified that risk? And are we thinking about alternatives, or does that just mean a loss of parking spaces? I notice at the same time the car parking income is actually up, but the number of tickets, the average ticket price is down, but the actual car parking fees is up. But I just wondered if you'd identified a further risk that it's not a temporary thing, that it might become a permanent thing.
No, I think it's better to say it's probably a very real risk that it'll be a permanent thing. Car parking is quite seasonal. That does go follow peaks and troughs throughout the year. I think if we let follow for another quarter, and then we'll see what the impact is and look at that car park level detail invoiced and see where we land. Obviously, there's other changes going at the same time in terms of the pay on exit things as well, and the tap in, tap out, that kind of thing. So I think at this stage we can't, on the financial side, say where we're going to land in terms of that, but certainly something we can keep an eye on as to where we land in terms of all those impacts playing through.
Okay, fair enough. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is the commercial refuse and recycling service, the direction of trend is down. Can you just comment on that and the potential further risk going forward? I don't know whether the change in waste contractors made any difference, because that's a separate service, isn't it?
It's the same contractor that provides under the same contract the collection of the commercial waste and commercial recycling. As you'll see in table 4, the current projection on the actual total income is still in line with budget, but the indicator is showing that there's a potential risk there in terms of the number of customers. Obviously, there's a potential that the number of customers could be fewer customers, but buying more services could still lead to the same income. There is still, I think, chance of more rollout for some of the commercial recycling services, which might pick up more customers than we do at the moment. But yeah, it has been a very, very slow, gradual decline in customers. We've seen over kind of a few of the quarters last year as well in terms of numbers of customers. So yeah, it is another area that's what indicators there is kind of prompts to go, is there an issue there? I think once we've kind of got the service change with the waste contract done, it might be an area that the waste team might want to look at in terms of basically drumming up more business, as well as kind of seeing what the reasons are for that decline.
Yeah, I think that would be worthwhile, because I think we could probably make a bit more money out of our commercial service and maybe drive up the customers. Then my overarching question to you was about the overall numbers. It looks like there's a net increase. Are you in expenditure? Are you comfortable with that as our S1? You know, that we're increasing the spend in the budget, given the financial projections and all, you know, as you're in your role as S151 officer, are you comfortable with these numbers?
I mean, we did at year end see some decreases in the ongoing numbers. The number I look at is the last column. I'm quite honest, the estimated impact in 26-27 number is the number I focus on.
Yeah.
We can deal with the kind of in-year variations. It's that ongoing impact that concerns me the most. We did see some decreases in ongoing spend as at the end of year. So at the moment, if it doesn't become a repeating trend, I'm okay with it, albeit that it's not helping to mitigate the potential pressure we've got that I've already addressed many, many times around our future funding and where that might land, albeit uncertainty about that given where the fair funding review may land. So not comfortable, but I'm not suddenly going to go, we need to be doing something about it just yet in isolation, albeit feeds into that overall picture around having a plan for when we know what our funding's going to be for the next, well, now probably 2 years after this one, having a plan for that to see, you know, what we do to address that when the time comes, and that will feed into that picture.
Okay, so essentially you're a little uneasy by the sounds of things.
I prefer to see it as a 0 or a minus that number, yes.
Yes, yeah, obviously. Okay, thank you very much for your answers.
Councillor Munster.
Thank you. Could I just draw attention to page 67 and table 5, which is sort of detailing the corporate financial health indicators. So in terms of the garden waste collection service, would you be able to give us an update as to sort of when we're actually going to be able to have that data made available to us? And the second question is relating to PCNs. As we discussed at length last night at ONS, whilst, yes, we have obviously seen a significant increase in the number of PCNs of which are issued, that doesn't necessarily correlate to the income of which, you know, this council is getting from them, because a substantial number of those, I think it was 68%, but off the top of my head, are actually being cancelled. So could we potentially sort of take another look at how we're actually recording that data to make it a little bit more clear as to the financial implication on the council?
Certainly by quarter 2, I'd expect to have some garden waste numbers. It's the time of year we've just got the renewals going out at this sort of time of year, so we kind of it is a kind of mass bit of work to do that. So yeah, by course still have to have the numbers in terms of science at that point. In terms of the PCNs, I think it's again, that table 5 is an indicator of where directions may go. Table 4 above is still showing that we are projecting that the income for PCNs will be in line with budget. We're not kind of projecting some massive increase in income just because that number's gone up, but it's an indicator to show direction that it may take. But obviously, given the points that raised scrutiny last night, and more generally, yeah, we're not going to forecast a sudden increase in PCN income for the reasons stated. So we'll again, something to look at and so sort of see where the numbers go. But still, it's still a useful indicator.
Any further questions at all? John Cannon.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of things. Number one, the internal auditor's report referenced improvements in back rent collection, further to control improvements after the estates audit. Please can you confirm that that's getting the money in more quickly rather than getting new money?
Yes, it will generally be getting the money in more quickly and therefore reducing a potential for bad debt.
Thank you. And the other thing, as we spoke the other day, please can you just confirm for the committee that there are some big numbers in here, including a benefit of £1 million additional interest this year. Are we certain about the big movements for now? And have we got comfort that internal processes are aligned to make sure that we don't have the same sort of backlogs of the numbers coming through now, having been updating prior budgets that we've seen? For example, updating loss of income from aborted capital projects.
Yeah, in reference to, so I touched on it earlier, reference to the list on page 60, yes, I'm happy that in future, we will stop that disconnect between the delay between changes to the capital budget and then change the revenue budget. Much better, that's addressed for future. We'll sort that out. Remember back what your first question was about, to remind me quickly.
Certainty over the big numbers being stable for now, and we don't foresee similar big updates in the next budget round.
No, that yeah, we'll make sure we get that sorted. And yeah, in terms of treasury management income, I'm confident that is an accurate number and reflects the fact that we've got much higher balances due to capital slippage and other reasons for paying more capital money at this time of year, and the fact that interest rates are higher than what we forecast means that treasury strategy. They are going down, interest rates, in terms of what we're receiving, but they've kind of been higher for enough of the year now that we kind of have got more income already banked from those investments.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can't see any further questions on this report. So the recommendations that committee notes and considers any governance and risk issues in relation to the Cabinet recommendations, which are 1, that Cabinet note this report, 2, that Cabinet approves the changes to the 2025-26 General Fund budget as identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, a £453,000 increase in net expenditure. 3, that Cabinet notes the changes to the 2026-27 General Fund budget as identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, a total £689,000 increase in net expenditure. These will be incorporated in the draft revenue budget for 2026-27. 4, that Cabinet delegates to the Director Resources in consultation with the Executive Member for Resources authority to enter into a business rate pooling arrangement, if available, if it is estimated that it will be in the financial interests of the Council. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor People-Singham, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Ward, thank you very much. Is there any debate from the committee? If not, then could we please move to the vote?
That motion's carried.
Thank you. Move on to item 10, first quarter Treasury Management Review 2025-26. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this is only comments to cabinet and recommendations, but it's still referencing my employer in it. So I suggest that I declare my interest as usual and depart the room temporarily.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. And we'll call you back in as soon as we can do. So I'll hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'll do quite a brief introduction. I've already covered the additional income we had planned to, we think we might get from Treasury investment incomes this year of £1 million above budget. And this sets out some reasons for it. As set out in paragraph 8.2, our average investment balances during the first quarter have been 50 million. That was above our forecasts. And the average interest rate as at the start of the year was 5.1% and dropped to 4.51% by the end of the quarter. Again, both those above our forecasts, which sort of leads to the fact that we're getting more interest out of investments. Paragraph 8.11 shows the split. We are seeing a bit more with banks than we did previously. At the end of the year, almost nothing with banks. We've got a bit more going to banks now. But still the lion's share is with government and with local authorities. They are still paying good rates for the level of risk involved. And then you've got the full list in paragraph 8.12.
Thank you. Councillor Munster.
Thank you. So just having a look at the list in the table that's at 8.12. So obviously there are a number of local authorities of which are listed there. And whilst I appreciate there are a number of which it would certainly appear have matured, what are the risks moving forward with respect to this type of investment with other local authorities, with local government reorganisation of which is going to occur?
All of the borrowing that local government undertakes will be passed to the successor bodies. So if it would be replaced by another body, it will move to that successor body. That body will still have tax raising powers, and therefore there is the same level of risk moving forward as it was before.
Yeah, that's quite good. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I just at 8.11 you highlighted that about our investments, and I just wondered why we don't invest with building societies. Is it due to the low interest rates?
Yes, generally yes. It is to do with rates. There was a time a few years ago when building societies were the majority of investments, and over time they are paying lower rates. Some aren't interested in the local authority market anymore. They'd rather get their money from other places, so they don't offer the same products to local authorities. So just changed over time. But yeah, that's the reason, is just the rates of the products aren't attractive.
Okay, thank you.
John Cannon.
Thank you. Can you just tell us a bit more about paragraph 6.1? It says the report contains a recommendation on a key executive decision. What was it, please?
That is for the cabinet version. So it's around it should be around the cabinet approving position on treasury management position rather than for yourselves.
Oh,
so yeah, that's an error.
Okay.
We should adjust that for this version of the report, which is for you who are not making key decisions, but cabinet would make key decisions.
And Councillor Munster.
Thank you. Just to sort of pick up to an extent the point that Councillor Brown was making regarding the diversification of our investments, and I note we have obviously approved the investment management strategy, but with the 16% of investments pertaining to banks, would you like us to increase the amount of investments that we have with banks to sort of spread the risk, or are you sort of content with where we are at the moment, or certainly sort of see a lower amount of investment with banks?
Our treasury strategy is on the basis that government is the lowest risk and we have unlimited capacity to invest in governments. Local authorities are also low risk, whilst we wouldn't want to put all our investments with any individual local authority. and there are limits for each one. We can overall put all our investments to local authorities, and then below that you then have banks as they're rated, and then below that you have rated building societies, then you have unrated building societies. So in that hierarchy, the lower risk in the strategy is with government, with local authorities, so you want more investment with those to decrease risk. So yeah, I'd be more concerned if the banks were really high, but certainly at 16% as well within our treasury strategy, and I'm happy with that level of investment. I don't mind, yeah, from a risk perspective, I have no issue with being leaving less with banks, and there could be more in the treasury strategy as long as it didn't go too high.
What would be an uncomfortable level of risk with banks?
I would have to go back to treasury strategy. But in the treasury strategy, it says what our current maximum limit is with banks.
Okay.
It sort of says it out both total in banks and also then total by institution, and then also total by groups, because obviously banks have groups of banks that are all part of the same group as well.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, the recommendation that Finance, Audit and Risk Committee provide comments to Cabinet on the position of Treasury management activity as at the end of June 2025. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor Brown, thank you. And a seconder. Why not? Go for it. Oh, you've been Councillor Lucas, thank you. Missed out there. Is there any debate? Councillor Brown.
This report's not for noting, it's for providing comments. I'm not sure we've provided any, have we? I mean, we've asked some questions.
I mean, it is for providing comments to Cabinet. I suppose it's more if there are any comments in terms of concerns. I know it's from the comments, the questions asked. It has been around a position in terms of Treasury management and clarifications of other areas. I mean, again, around increased risk potentially through LGR. I suppose it's if we do have comments, if there aren't any pertaining to the paper at the moment, then yeah. But if there are any, please do provide them. If not, we can only. That's what we ask. Any other debate at all? If not, then can we please move to the vote?
That motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, Councillor Ward. We'll now move on to item 11, final quarter capital budget monitoring review 2025-26. Hand back over to Ian Cooper to present.
Yeah, this is the first quarter of the capital programme. You'd have been used to seeing this combined with the Treasury report before into one report, but we've separated them out for a few reasons, mainly so that Council in this committee can take full part in this, at least this bit of the debate, but also it's no extra effort. It does help as well in terms of there's no issues doing that. So we've done that, and this is the capital position. As you're probably used to, table 2 is the position in terms of capital projects that are proposed to be delayed into future years, and the reasons are set out in that table. And then table 3 on page 96 mainly is looking at those where there's changes to the total projected spend for this year in terms of total project, and the reasons again set out there. We are now in a position where we have moved into funding, not being able to fund all our capital spend from capital receipts. So we are going to sort of start to apply capital financing requirements and minimum revenue provision from next year. So just to flag that we have moved into that position now with the capital spend incurred to date. and that obviously will continue during the rest of the year in terms of as we spend more and more money. That'll be more and more draw down against our capital financing requirements. Apart from that, the report is sort of as I've just presented, but have to take any questions.
Councillor Brown.
I'm just trying to think how to phrase this question. I was a bit surprised to see the solar for business has been cancelled. And the reasons seem to be, well, obviously finding suitable business, but also that it was mainly aimed at carbon outcomes. My understanding was that it should eventually have been revenue generating, income generating. Was that wrong? Was that never likely to happen? I just feel it's a bit of a shame. There's an awful lot of industrial units around the district that have no solar panels on them that could be covered in solar panels quite easily. And it just seems a bit of a shame to cancel this project. But I know we're talking about risks here, so can you comment on why that was and what the risks were?
Yeah, there's a lot of push to try and find businesses to take up the offer. We wanted to be a bit cautious in terms of making sure that they were secure businesses who would be able to continue to pay over the whole life of the solar panels, given their life is sort of 20, 25 years. We want sort of secure businesses. So there were local protections in place of that. So there were kind of legal agreements that had to be signed up to get to it. And there just wasn't the interest from the right sort of businesses in that space in terms of the publicity to put out there. And we can't force businesses to take it up. But the plan was that there would be a small return to the council, but also the benefits of the business. But there just wasn't the market there at this time. And it was a lot of work in terms of our sustainability officers' time. And therefore, if we're looking at sustainability of the council and meeting our climate objectives, probably better use of their time to be looking at kind of more of a council focus than that wider focus at this time. Not so can't come back to a future date, but that's where we are at the moment with that project.
Well, thank you for that explanation. It's just a little disappointing, but we are obviously doing the big leisure centre decarbonisation project, which obviously has huge benefits. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? If not, the recommendation that Finance, Audit and Risk Committee consider any governance and risk issues in relation to the Cabinet recommendations, which are 1, that Cabinet notes the forecast expenditure of £27.624 million in 2025-26 on the capital programme, paragraph 8.3 refers. 2, that Cabinet approves the adjustments to the capital programme for 2026-27 onwards as a result of the revised timetables of schemes detailed in Table 2 and 3, increasing the estimated spend in 2026-27 by £0.838 million and £0.608 million in 2027-28. 3, that Cabinet notes the position of the availability of capital resources as detailed in Table 4, paragraph 8.6, and the requirement to keep the capital programme under review for affordability. 4, that Cabinet recommends to Council that they approve a capital budget of £1.275 million, £0.319 million in 25-26, £0.478 million in 26-27, and £0.478 million in 27-28 for the government's new Energy Efficiency Warm Homes scheme. This will be fully funded from government grants, paragraph 8.5 refers. Could I please have a proposer? Councillor Pupil-Singham, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Lucas, thank you. Is there any debate? If not, then could we please move to the vote?
That motion's carried.
Thank you. Item 12, possible agenda items for future meetings. It's our usual closing item, just in case there is any suggested topics for discussion at future meetings. Again, if there isn't anything off the top of anyone's heads, then always welcome any commentary in between meetings, in case there is any other items that the committee would like to consider. Obviously, that fits within our remit and the purview that we have under our terms of reference. If there's nothing for discussion now, then I'll close the meeting. So our next meeting is on Wednesday, the 12th of November, 2025, and we'll close today's meeting at 21:39. Thanks everyone for attending. And just quickly for committee members, for those who can stay, I'll hand over to Ian if everyone's happy, just to do a quick bit of training.